In the black silence between stars, beyond the Emperor's light and deeper than any void beacon dare scan, lies the tomb world of Solemnace. It is a forbidden place, lost to all but myth and shadowed records, known only in scattered whispers across Mechanicus data caches and the deepest vaults of the Inquisition. Solemnace is no ordinary Necron world. It is the personal dominion of one of the most elusive and unorthodox lords of the ancient Necron dynasties, Trazyn the Infinite. The planet itself is not lifeless, though nothing there breathes. Its crust is wrapped in adamantine architecture and stellar reactive alloys that shift like a labyrinth. Its skies shimmer with arcane distortions, concealing the world beneath from psychic scans and orbital surveillance. Across its surface, monolithic pylons churn out waves of temporal stability, anchoring the fabric of reality itself. Warp translation in orbit is almost impossible. Attempts to land without permission often end with the craft being disassembled atom by atom, their contents sorted and indexed before the pilot realizes they've died. Beneath this mantle lies the true marvel, Trazyn's museum, a necropolis of knowledge vast beyond measurement, buried in layers that defy spatial logic. The deeper one descends, the older the relics become. Great chambers sprawl beneath the crust, each one an exhibit, a gallery, or a sealed vault filled with impossible wonders. The gates are guarded not by soldiers but by ancient engrams, consciousness shards locked into immortal servitor husks. Their minds contain every catalogued item, every theft, every name collected by their master. They are librarians of war and curators of tragedy. Beyond them, cryptech-controlled stasis fields hum softly, preserving moments harvested from across millennia. Trazyn does not collect objects in the way a mortal might gather coins or art. He collects events, moments in time frozen and displayed. A Black Templar chaplain shouting a benediction before being torn apart by tyrannids. A war council of Eldar farseers, their souls trapped mid-debate as lightning lances through a webway breach. The last breath of a saint, the final transmission of a dying moon. These are not recreations. They are exact captures, ripped from history, suspended in motion. It is said that Trazyn once captured an entire battlefield, moments before a cyclonic torpedo erased the region. Every bolt shell mid-flight, every cry of pain locked in amber time. 1,000 lives arrested in their final seconds, positioned with surgical precision across a gallery designed to educate or entertain. The heart of Solemnace contains these stories in perfect silence. Hundreds of galleries stretch in all directions, each sealed by entropic locks keyed to Trazyn's will alone. No one else alive understands their functions. Some vaults contain items so dangerous they have not been opened in over 10,000 years. Others, it is rumored, do not open to physical beings at all, but require a soul or a memory to pass through. At the core of this world stands Trazyn's personal archive. Its doors are engraved with impossible equations and Necrontyr script so old that even the cryptechs debate their meaning. Within, only Trazyn may tread freely. Here, behind time-phase fields and illusion-laced halls, sits the Archivum throne from which he catalogues, edits, and judges the histories he has claimed. Trazyn believes himself a steward of the galaxy's truth. Not the Imperium's truth, nor Chaos's lies, nor the faded myths of the Eldar, but the truth of what happened. To him, all civilizations are temporary, their wars, their heroes, their triumphs, ashes on the wind. But captured and preserved, they become eternal. His own Necron kin consider him erratic at best. The Silent King tolerates his obsessions, seeing them as a necessary eccentricity in a decaying empire. Some dynasties revere his collections as sacred chronicles. Others seek to destroy them, declaring Trazyn a thief and a danger. But none dare challenge him here, not on Solemnace, not in the vaults where time stands still and history breathes in crystal cages. Trazyn does not hoard for wealth, he does not conquer for land. He collects because he must, because the galaxy forgets, because lies spread faster than truth, because, in the end, only the curated memory survives. This is the truth of Solemnace. Not a tomb world, but a reliquary. Not a grave, but a stage. And its curator watches, waits, and acquires. One moment, one soul, one catastrophe at a time. In the winding depths beneath the obsidian skin of Solemnace, after the tomb gates have sealed and the stasis-warded air grows thick with ancient ozone, there lies a place unlike any other in the galaxy. The prismatic galleries. These chambers are not arranged by theme or logic, not laid out by mortal standards. They spiral and split, branch like nerves, sometimes rearranging themselves depending on who walks their paths, assuming Trazyn allows such a visitor in the first place. And should one be permitted this dark privilege, what awaits them is not merely history, but its living echo. The galleries shimmer with an unearthly sheen. Each arch and corridor is carved from chromatic necrostone, refracting ambient light into countless hues, shadows dancing across every surface like memories trying to escape. The walls themselves ripple subtly, not quite solid, humming softly with the layered energies of chronomantic stasis fields and overlapping reality locks. In each chamber, time is a prisoner, not stopped, but slowed, fractured, or looped. It is here that Trazyn houses his most infamous and paradoxical acquisitions, living events caught like insects in amber. One gallery depicts the death charge of the 38th Mordian Iron Guard during the siege of Velkarn Hive. Dozens of guardsmen, faces twisted in fury and fear, are captured in a perfect kinetic freeze, them surging up the cratered slope as Orkoid artillery falls like burning hail around them. Each flicker of ash in the air is real. Each scream, though silent, remains locked on lips. A commissar mid-salute with his last pistol drawn. A Vox operator crushed under collapsed ferrocrete, still reaching for his signal box. In this chamber, the moment of sacrifice has no end. It does not decay. It simply is. Trazyn does not merely display these scenes. He curates them, adjusts lighting, reroutes gravity lenses, shifts observer platforms to view from alternative angles. To him, the heroism of a single mortal, dying in defiance of hopeless odds, is as valuable as the coronation of a planetary governor or the last breath of a fallen xenos king. Emotion, spectacle, loss. These are the brush strokes in the artwork of war, and the prismatic galleries are where these works are hung. Not all exhibits are military, however. One chamber, known only by its glyph, translated roughly as the Cradle of Heresy, contains a moment pulled from deep within the Great Crusade. A rogue word-bearer's chaplain stands mid-sermon, preaching to a primitive world of techno-barbaric humans. Around him are primitive idols smashed, torch flames suspended in stillness, and the silent congregation frozen in awe, horror, or betrayal. Whether this was before or after the Lorgarian schism is unknown. Perhaps it is deliberately ambiguous. Trazyn has ensured that no record exists outside this scene. Only here, within the shimmer of the gallery, does the past reveal itself. Another hall, narrower and colder, contains the instant before the viral bombing of Istvan III. The loyalist Marines below, their armor unblemished, their postures calm and unaware, are displayed looking skyward, toward a curved holographic projection of descending death. The virus bombs themselves are represented only by a faint green shimmer over the vaulted ceiling. Trazyn, in one of his recovered missives to a Cryptek colleague, referred to this exhibit as a study in unintended loyalty. He considers it one of his most emotionally potent displays. It's worth noting that these are not statues. They are not sculptures or holographic forgeries. The figures in each scene are the actual participants, individuals collected at the moment of their defining act, retrieved through methods only Trazyn and his cryptech artisans understand. Some were taken seconds before death and locked in stasis fields, so refined they preserved the soul's electrogeist. Others were reconstituted from battlefield echoes, mind pattern fragments, and scattered genomic residues, then woven back into corporeal stasis by eldritch science and temporal sorcery. In one particularly haunting chamber, an Eldar Farseer kneels beside a collapsed infinity circuit shard. Her tears, like pearls, hover in midair, catching the gallery light. Behind her, runes flicker and warp, an indication of the psychic feedback loop that doomed her world. The plaque beside her simply reads, Altansar, Final Prognostication. There is no other explanation. Visitors, if they existed, would be left to interpret the scene for themselves. Rumors persist that some of the exhibits are not entirely dormant, that certain halls must be relocked every century, lest the stasis weaken. There are hushed tales among Necron ranks that once a Harlequin dancer moved, even turned her head slightly, as a Lich Guard passed by. Others claim that on nights when the stars align with the crypt world's celestial array, faint murmurs drift through the galleries, the echoes of speeches, gunfire, and screams from the past. Trazyn has never confirmed nor denied these tales. Indeed, he may have fabricated them. After all, a curator must always keep his guests wondering whether they are observers or participants. Not all acquisitions were taken cleanly. Several exhibits required brutal campaigns of subterfuge, blackmail, or even interdimensional deception. It is known among Ordo Xenos intelligence circles that Trazyn once assumed the identity of an inquisitorial attaché for nearly 2 decades, manipulating an entire expeditionary force toward a world he wished to harvest. When they uncovered the long-lost shrine of the Emperor's lamentation, it was Trazyn who claimed it, slipping it into a tesseract vault while the humans were busy documenting what turned out to be a carefully orchestrated replica. Other times, he simply arrives during battle, teleporting down mid-siege in a wave of lightning and chronomist. With his phasing protocols active and a retinue of mind-shackled servitors, he slips through conflict as though it were performance art, choosing the precise moment to capture a sergeant's defiance or a psyker's last apocalyptic shriek. There are darker rumors, too. Some whisper that he does not always wait for the moment to end, that he has created events specifically for the purpose of preserving them, staged entire massacres using puppets and shadows, carefully manipulating the combatants toward an outcome worthy of preservation. A few radical Mechanicus logs, buried deep in data crucibles, sealed by the redacted Martian conclave, suggest that at least one major xenos uprising in the Ultima Segmentum was instigated by an entity fitting Trazyn's profile, with the express goal of creating a multi-faction diorama. Whether truth or apocrypha, it reveals the true ambition that pulses beneath the gallery's polished surface. What is certain is this. Within the prismatic galleries, the past is not gone. It is framed, suspended, perfected. The noble, the doomed, the traitorous, the sacred, all are equal here, equal in the eyes of the infinite. And while the rest of the galaxy burns, forgets, rewrites, and dies, here in the quiet, flickering stasis of Trazyn's domain, history does not fade. It glows. Beyond the shimmer and spectacle of the prismatic galleries, past chambers pulsing with the frozen energies of battlefield echoes, lies a section of the museum far more intimate and infinitely more sacrilegious. The Necrons do not worship, not in the way the younger species do. They possess no clergy, no hymns. But Trazyn collects faith. And in a hall where silence suffocates even thought, the Infinite Curator has assembled what may be the most profane archive of the Imperium's spiritual legacy, the Sanctum of Saints and Heretics. The chamber's entrance is guarded not by warriors, but by towering statues carved from darkstone, a material that consumes light. These figures bear no inscriptions, no sigils, yet anyone who approaches them instinctively feels as if they are being judged. The doors are sealed with an impossible lock, one that does not require a key or code, but rather conviction. It is rumored the lock reads the soul and opens only to those who believe in nothing. Inside, the temperature shifts. The very air feels thinner, tighter, not due to mechanical controls, but because of the psychic residue bleeding from the artifacts held within. This is a hall steeped in martyrdom and madness, blasphemy and reverence. Trazyn has curated here not just relics of battle, but the remnants of ideology, fragments of belief torn from the dying cries of prophets and fanatics alike. The first display greets intruders with a slow, soft pulse, a crystalline reliquary hovering above a plinth of phase-wrought marble. Suspended within is a tattered banner, the personal standard of Saint Vehementia of Halitus Prime, scorched black during the purge of the heretic techno-sect known as the Corpus Vox. The fibers still carry the scent of incense and burning oil. Her last recorded words, spoken as she immolated herself rather than surrender to xenos corruption, echo through the chamber on an endless loop. Burn me, but not my purpose. Trazyn has embedded the voice into a low-frequency transmission heard only by those within 5 paces. Whether the voice was truly hers or a reconstruction matters not. Its weight presses down on all who hear it. Beside the banner, cased in magnetic repulsion fields, rests an object so heretical that even mentioning its existence would earn the death sentence in the ecclesiarchy. The fossilized heart of Lorgar Aurelian, or a near-perfect simulacrum created from the earliest genetic lineages of Colchis. Discovered in the ruins beneath the Shrine of Illumination on Obscurus Tertius, the heart pulses faintly, not with blood, but with warp resonance. A tiny sliver of silver script floats beside it in binary glyphs. Faith misused is still faith. The implication of Trazyn's mockery is unmistakable. But the crown jewel of the sanctum, the exhibit around which all others orbit, is the one known only in the deepest whispers of forbidden inquisitorial records, the living saint of Solemnace. Clad in white gold armor, her wings unfurled in perfect motion, suspended in time at the apex of her righteous fury, is a figure identical in every detail to Saint Celestine, champion of the Emperor's will, the living blade of his divine light, the fireheart of the reborn faith. She floats mid-charge, her eyes alight with fury and compassion, her blade halfway through an arcing sweep meant to smite some forgotten foe. The light cast by her form is not artificial. It glows with an internal flame, stasis contained but undimmed. Trazyn's possession of this figure is one of the great scandals of the galaxy, though none dare confirm it aloud. The question is not merely whether it is truly Saint Celestine, it is whether there is more than one. Theories abound. Some claim she is a clone, created by Fabius Bile, and sold to Trazyn in a transaction that also involved gene seed and a caged Fulgrim. Others believe she is an echo, a fragment of Celestine's essence that split from the original during one of her countless deaths and resurrections, trapped in the quantum drift and collected by Trazyn during one of his many temporal scavenges. There is even a theory, whispered only in the most radical Ordo Chronos cells, that Trazyn plucked this Celestine from a divergent timeline, a path where she fell in battle and did not rise, a path that has been erased or sealed. Whether true or fabrication, the result is the same. A being of divine magnitude, frozen, displayed, and studied like a curious animal in a glass cage. Beneath the suspended figure is a shrine-like installation of imperial devotional relics. Among them, a cracked aquila carved from bone, the last communion chalice of the Cardinal Executor of Hive Samos, and a sealed vox capsule recorded by Canoness Astra Virel as she led a failed final assault against a Necron tomb complex centuries ago. The capsule, upon activation, plays only static, yet those who listen for too long sometimes report hearing faint hymns under the distortion. There is another relic here, unnoticed by most. A small, unremarkable candle. No inscription, no aura, no visible energy signature. Yet this candle never burns down. It remains lit, the flame flickering in complete stillness, not even swaying to the movement of those nearby. Some believe it is a symbol of resistance, a living prayer stolen from the lips of a dying priest. Others say it was a gift, freely given by an unknown pilgrim who met Trazyn and saw in him, if not salvation, then the possibility of memory beyond death. The sanctum is not neutral. Those who walk its halls are changed. Necron cryptechs avoid its thresholds unless summoned. Even Trazyn does not linger here as long as he does in the battle galleries. This chamber hums with contradiction, faith and mockery, light and shadow, salvation and containment. Here, belief is pinned to the wall like an insect. Inquisitorial records indicate that once, during the time of the 13th Black Crusade, Inquisitor Katarina Grell was briefly held captive within this sanctum. She was abducted not for torture nor interrogation, but as a subject. Trazyn considered her a living exemplar of theological dissonance, a woman who had once condemned sorcery but later wielded sanctioned psychery in service to the Emperor. Grell was released days later, unharmed, her memory partially altered. Yet she later executed an entire convent of sisters for failing to declare the existence of false miracles. Whether she was driven mad by what she saw or enlightened remains debated. Trazyn keeps no labels in this hall, no lecterns, no placards naming the exhibits. The only notation is an inscription etched in Necron script into the floor at the sanctum's exit. It reads, "Faith endures longer when forgotten." Outside the chamber, the light returns, the ambient stasis lifts, the muffled hymns vanish. But for those who have walked the sanctum, something always lingers, a doubt, a memory, or a question that no longer fits into any prayer. In the deeper arteries of Solemnace, where even the cryptechs tread lightly and the chronostatic locks hum with layered failsafes, there exists a gallery that has no defined borders. No map in Trazyn's vast mental codices can fully account for its growth. Known only as the Hall of the Forgotten Wars, this gallery does not house battles recorded in the annals of the Imperium, or mourned by shattered civilizations, or even remembered by the species who fought them. These are conflicts erased by time, censored by higher powers, or consumed entirely by the warp. And yet, Trazyn remembers them all. The entrance to the hall does not present itself visibly. It is not marked by architecture, but by dissonance. As one walks the corridors of Solemnace, following neatly catalogued displays and curated dioramas, there comes a point where the walls themselves feel wrong, where the glow of stasis fields seems slightly off in spectrum, as though tuned to an alien frequency. There, reality frays gently, not broken but stretched, and the observer finds themselves standing before a shadowed arch of shifting metal, shaped not by design, but by recollection. This is the boundary of the Forgotten Wars. Cross it and you leave behind the certainty of history. Inside, the gallery is dark, not from lack of illumination, but because the memories it holds actively resist being known. The air tastes of iron and static. No stasis fields flicker here. No plinths display names. There are no plaques, no explanatory sigils, no guiding data feeds, only presence. To most, the chamber would appear empty. But Solemnace responds differently to different minds, and the Hall of Forgotten Wars unfolds according to the thoughts of the intruder. What one sees is shaped not by the exhibit, but by the capacity to understand what was lost. To a human visitor, assuming any ever reached this depth, it might begin as a faint murmur of battle cries in unknown tongues. Then come the shadows, hulking forms locked in ancient melee, bleeding light and screaming without sound. Wars that did not make it into the books, victories no longer claimed. Defeats so complete that the very memory of the losing side was stripped from reality itself. Trazyn's acquisition of these moments is not well understood, even among his closest cryptechs. While many of his other displays are stolen from known historical loci, carefully lifted from the tapestry of recorded war, the Hall of Forgotten Wars contains events that had no witnesses, at least none who survived. There are fragments here of the Battle of Coldix Prime, where a sentient orbital AI fought for 2 weeks against a fleet of intergalactic parasites that may never have originated in the Materium. There are echoes of the Vraxil Resistance, a civilization consumed entirely by a sentient sun, whose stellar sermons caused madness across 8 systems. The Resistance never even fired a shot. Trazyn acquired their death song and displays it as a soundless, pulsing waveform along an obsidian wall. The most haunting exhibit is one that is not visible at all. It is known by Trazyn as the War of One, and occupies a sealed sphere suspended in null gravity at the center of the hall. To the eye, it is an empty void, but approach it slowly, and one begins to feel the weight of it pressing in. There are no visuals, no movement, but a presence, an emotional pressure that deepens with proximity. It is theorized to be a record of a war fought psychically, possibly within the mind of a single being so powerful that the conflict generated its own false timeline. Some speculate it is an echo of a war between 2 perpetuals. Others say it is a demon-constructed simulation so perfect that it became real, if only for a nanosecond. Whatever it is, Trazyn has trapped it here, not to display, but to contain. No one is sure how Trazyn collects what has been forgotten. Some believe he travels through unreality, using hyperphasic translocators to pierce the void between timelines. Others insist he employs technomantic dredge scanners to harvest fragments of memory from the subquantum psychic tides that ebb beneath the warp. A radical theory posits that Trazyn may have a stolen shard of the Black Library itself, allowing him to access timelines that were never meant to unfold. Of course, Trazyn has never confirmed any of this. His only remark on the matter, recorded once by a tech priest emissary of the Adeptus Mechanicus, was this: oblivion is the rarest kind of truth. The hall also houses several tangible remnants, artifacts with no provenance, yet immense power. A broken weapon blade the size of a thunderhawk, marked with symbols not used by any known culture. A sphere that generates its own lightless gravity well, inside which can be heard, if one listens long enough, the ghost of a child's lullaby. And near the far wall, covered in whispering glyphs that phase in and out of translation, is a simple, empty throne. No figure sits upon it, but its pressure displaces time around it. The throne itself bears no symbols of any existing human, Eldari, Necron, or Orc society. And yet, when viewed, it feels familiar, as though all viewers, regardless of species or loyalty, know that it was once meant for someone they followed and failed. It is within the Hall of Forgotten Wars that Trazyn's true obsession is laid bare. He does not merely collect history to preserve it, he collects it to deny death its silence. In these chambers, extinction has no final word. Species erased by the warp, ideas purged from memory, civil wars that were lost before they began. They are all here, suspended not just in time, but in refusal. Trazyn, in his endless logic, has declared that if something is remembered, truly remembered, it never ends. And so the hall remains, not a monument, not a record, but a resistance. There is a final story here, whispered among the oldest Necron minds who once served the Silent King before the biotransference. They claim Trazyn once brought a fragment of memory to Solemnace, so powerful, so toxic to causality, that the gallery holding it collapsed in on itself. Not physically, but ontologically. The concept of the room was erased. All who had seen it forgot it existed. And yet, Trazyn still visits that location. He stands before the blank wall, staring into empty stone. Occasionally, he smiles. For within that silence, something remains. A war that was never fought. A truth never told. A memory so lost that only the Infinite remembers. And in Solemnace, that is enough. At the threshold of Solemnace's deepest forbidden vaults, beyond corridors that shift behind you and light that never falls the same way twice, exists a chamber unlike any other in the museum. It is not part of the main galleries. It does not appear on any path or schematic, and no stasis ward or artificial gravity anchor guards it like the others. This room is accessed only by a bridge suspended in non-space, a black corridor that folds back into itself until time bends like a sheet of metal twisted too far. At its end waits a door formed of layered crystalline reflections, each surface bearing a different version of the same face. Beautiful, cruel, serene, wrathful. This is the Chamber of the Serpent. Here, Trazyn houses what many consider his most blasphemous and dangerous acquisition. Not a weapon, not a relic of lost technology, not a preserved battlefield or dying cry of a forgotten empire. Number, what is kept here is a man, crafted, not born, sculpted from stolen essence and sculpted with vile precision. This is the clone of Fulgrim, not the demon Primarch, not the writhing, four-armed abomination who fell to Slaanesh and bathed in the agony of perfection, but the original as he might have been. This clone is untainted, pure, loyal. It is the Primarch Fulgrim as he was in the early years of the Great Crusade, before pride, before the Layer Blade, before the slow, ecstatic collapse into madness. It is the Golden Phoenician returned from myth, and it is not dead. He stands in the center of the chamber, encased within a prism of mirrored stasis glass, as if floating inside a gem the size of a small cathedral. He is motionless, yes, but he is not still. There is breath, subtle as a starquake, a pulse, though faint. And when one dares to approach the chamber's perimeter field, a pressure blooms behind the eyes, an aura that pushes against the mind, testing your convictions, your sense of self, your belief. The clone is clad in ornate power armor, no filigree of chaos, no baroque corruption. It is a suit fit for a lord of the Emperor's design, gold chased with violet, a serpent sigil etched across the breastplate, and a long white cloak that somehow defies gravity, suspended as though caught in an eternal breeze. His blade is sheathed, hands resting calmly at his sides. His eyes are closed, not in sleep, in contemplation. He is thinking. The origin of the clone is not fully known. Some among the more radical Ordo Xenos circles claim it is the work of Fabius Bile, the twisted gene savant who once dabbled in recreating all 20 Primarchs for his own mad empire of monsters. Records suggest that during a campaign through the ruins of an Emperor's Children gene lab on Canticle 7, Trazyn's agents recovered multiple cloning vats. One contained a subject near perfect in genetic resonance. Others believe Trazyn did not merely find the clone, he commissioned it. or worse, engineered it himself with Necron genetic sequencing technology stolen from the tomb world of Silexa 10. Regardless of origin, what matters more is this: the clone is complete. Not a shell, not a mindless husk, no lobotomized puppet. Somehow, whether by psychic imprint, memory transference, or quantum soul mirroring, this version of Fulgrim remembers. He knows who he is. Trazyn once wrote in a private transmission to a cryptech of the Ultrek dynasty that the clone possesses all the charisma, intellect, and command of the original Phoenician, but without the fracture that made him vulnerable to corruption. A version of Fulgrim that never turned, never bowed, never let his sons fall into degeneracy. In another message, more cryptic and filled with ancient Necrontyr sigils for regret and fate-weaving, Trazyn said, "In this man is contained the war that never happened, the rebellion that failed before it began, the tragedy turned myth." What remains unstated but utterly clear is the danger of such an artifact. If the clone were to awaken fully, what would he become? Would he believe himself to be the true Fulgrim? Would he seek out his sons, now twisted mockeries of what he once forged, and try to reclaim them? Would he declare himself the Emperor's loyal blade, demand audience with Robute Gilliman, or march toward Terra bearing his identity as proof? Could such a being even exist in the galaxy without driving it mad? The psychological implications are vast. A loyal Fulgrim, revealed to the masses of the Imperium, would fracture the ecclesiarchy's narratives, unsettle the balance of primarchic power, and destabilize the political structure of the Imperium Nihilus. He would be a martyr, a messiah, or a monster, depending on who beheld him. Worse still, the true Fulgrim, the demon prince, might sense his presence. One can scarcely imagine the consequences of two Fulgrims walking the same galaxy. And yet, Trazyn keeps him. He has made no attempt to trade the clone, nor to weaponize him. He simply displays him, locked away in the crystal heart of his museum. There are no plaques, no names, no visitors. Only Trazyn himself enters the chamber. Sometimes he stands for hours before the prism, silently watching. At times he speaks aloud, though his words are never recorded. Some suspect he debates the clone, offering philosophical monologues on fate and failure. Others believe Trazyn is waiting for something. Perhaps the clone is meant to be used, not now, but in some future age, as a piece in a grander design only Trazyn comprehends. The chamber is not inert. The stasis prism is protected by a triple-layered phase disruptor grid and guarded by a pair of silent constructs known only as the Seraphim of Null, humanoid guardians forged from anti-psychic alloy, wielding blades that have never drawn blood because no one has ever survived long enough to make them necessary. Some believe the Fulgrim clone is dreaming, that he relives moments from the Great Crusade within the suspended realm of his prison. Others argue that he knows he is imprisoned and is simply waiting, watching, absorbing all that his immortal mind can within the confines of glass and silence. That if released, he would not emerge as Fulgrim the Loyal, but something else entirely, something shaped by millennia of reflection, isolation, and potential. Only Trazyn knows for certain, and he is not telling. In the end, the clone of Fulgrim is not just a trophy, he is a question, a wound that has not yet scarred, a story paused mid-chapter. In a museum filled with final moments and preserved ends, this exhibit is the rarest of all. An unwritten future. Trazyn, the collector of endings, keeps this one beginning locked away in a vault, and the galaxy spins on, unaware that beneath the surface of Solemnace, the possibility of a different Primarch still breathes, and one day may awaken. Far below the glittering halls of historical grandeur and mythic folly, where the air grows dry with the taste of sterilization and the architecture sheds all ornament in favor of brutal containment design, lies a facility in Solemnace known only as the Specimen Vault Theta 9. There are no guided pathways here, no luminous plaques to soothe the curious. This is not a place of philosophy or artistry. It is a vault, a prison, where Trazyn keeps that which cannot be understood, only caged. These are not echoes of war or symbols of pride. They are monsters. And among the worst of them are the things the galaxy calls tyrannids. The vault itself is constructed in a spiral descent, each level a concentric ring descending around a central shaft of null light. The walls are inscribed not with language, but with warning patterns, psycho-reactive glyphs designed to be felt, not read. Visitors, if any beyond Trazyn and his cryptex have ever been allowed, describe the sensation of dread growing stronger with each downward step, until thoughts become slow and dreams turn alien. The first vault ring contains lesser creatures, genestealers, hive guard, ripper swarms, suspended in temporal gel and anchored with molecular chains. Each specimen pulses faintly with residual biokinetics. The displays are not frozen like in other galleries. They shift, breathe, and in rare cases, twitch. Trazyn considers these the education floor, where the fundamental strains of the tyrannid genome are laid bare for examination. There's a juvenile lictor in Tank 3A, its feeder tendrils still twitching every 13 seconds, despite being suspended for over 900 standard years. There's also a bisected zoanthrope, each half contained in its own tank, still humming with neurostatic discharge that needs to be bled into grounding rods every 72 hours, lest it shatter the vault's integrity fields. But these are nothing compared to what lies deeper. At the core of Vault Theta 9, within a containment chamber fortified by 4 independent reality anchors and a Necron dimensional phase vault, is Specimen Alpha 4 Null, a fully intact hive tyrant captured during the siege of Vuros. The tale of its acquisition has never been publicly told. What fragments exist come from Trazyn's own logs, encrypted messages buried in failed data requests sent to the Mefrit dynasty, who at the time had been struggling against a splinter of Hive Fleet Jormungandr. According to those records, Trazyn deployed a stasis warp prism during the Tyrannid advance on Vuros' last bastion. At the moment the Hive Tyrant leapt to impale the remaining defenders, 36 Sisters of Battle and a single Ultramarine, it vanished in a pulse of phase light. The defenders died anyway. The Tyrannids overran the stronghold, but the Hive Tyrant was gone, snared, trapped. Now it floats within a fluid chamber several stories high, its immense wings folded like meat sails, its scything talons frozen mid-reach. Its eyes, 6 of them, glow faintly in cycles, indicating that consciousness flickers just beneath the stasis field. The tyrant still lives. It has never stopped living. It is a god insect of war, armored in chitin thick enough to deflect Lascanan fire, and it is aware. To the average Imperial biologist or Magos xenologist, the very idea of caging a hive tyrant would be absurd. These are synaptic leaders of Tyrannid invasions, psychic foci through which the hive mind channels its will. They do not simply live, they broadcast. To imprison one is to challenge the mind of the swarm itself, and yet Trazyn did more than cage it. He silenced it. Through a combination of soul inertial dampeners, chronomantic interruption fields, and something referred to only as a neural echo scrambler, the hive tyrant remains psychically muted. It cannot reach its kind. It cannot receive orders. It floats in a sea of blankness, blind to the will of its creator, deaf to the song of its swarm. And it hates. Even in its silence, that hate is palpable. It radiates through the fluid, through the tank's crystal skin, through the armored casing that wraps the vault like an interstellar coffin. The cryptechs tasked with monitoring the tank change every decade. Those who serve longer develop paranoia, aggression, and, on at least one recorded occasion, began carving spiraling glyphs into their own metallic plating, attempting to map the hunger. Trazyn has, on multiple occasions, released recordings of the Hive Tyrant's brainwave patterns. He finds them soothing. To others, they are auditory hallucinations of predation and death, static that reshapes into screams and chirps and the crunch of bone. Yet Trazyn insists the exhibit remains crucial, not as a warning, but as a reference. The Hive Tyrant is not merely a creature, it is a monument to inevitability, a biological deity stripped from its cathedral of flesh and swarm, placed under glass and made to wait. In it, Trazyn sees an embodiment of pure purpose, something born to consume, now rendered helpless, a predator with nothing left to devour but its own thoughts. He uses the specimen frequently, not in war but in theory craft. During the early years of the Indomitus Crusade, Trazyn temporarily linked the tyrant's psychic dampener field to the outer periphery of Solemnace, preventing an unaligned genestealer cult from identifying the tomb world during their ascension rites. The cult, unable to hear the stars and confused by the silence, tore itself apart. Trazyn later added their skeletal remains as a sub-exhibit on Level 2, tagging it Faith Without Direction. But the tyrant is not the only danger stored in Theta 9. In sealed container 11V lies what appears to be a node spore cluster, dormant but still excreting trace amounts of pheromone analogs. This node was recovered from the remains of a ship consumed during the invasion of Stoma Secundus. According to a note Trazyn left in his personal records, it is a map that leads nowhere yet everywhere if you breathe it. The cryptechs avoid this tank altogether. Nearby, mounted in a reinforced display, is an isolated synaptic amplifier core, a Tyranid device grown from neural stem structure. Unlike the other pieces in the vault, this one moves, not physically but visually. It seems to shift when unobserved, rearranging its root structure into new patterns that resemble star charts, DNA strands, or sometimes glyphs resembling ancient Necrontier script. Trazyn has made several attempts to decipher it, but with limited success. Once, when left activated for over 60 cycles, the core generated a pulse of energy that summoned several feral Tyranid bioforms from elsewhere in the tomb. They were purged, but the implications remained troubling. At the lowest point of the vault, directly below the Hive Tyrant's containment prism, there is a final door, sealed, fused, and unmarked. No records exist of what lies behind it. No cryptech claims to have entered it. Yet sometimes, on moonless nights, the sensors across Vault Theta 9 detect movement within it. Not motion, but presence. An intelligence that should not be. Perhaps it is another Tyranid. Perhaps it is something worse. Trazyn leaves it be, for now. In a museum filled with ghosts and echoes, with saints and traitors and false gods, the Tyranid Vault stands alone. It does not memorialize history. It contains hunger. It does not inspire awe. It imposes silence. It is a place where even memory goes quiet, swallowed by the weight of instinct made flesh. And within it, in the heart of the dark, something watches through 1,000 unblinking eyes and waits. Tucked away in the uppermost arcologies of Solemnace, above the grand galleries, above the relic vaults, even above the screaming silence of the Tyranid specimen chambers, rests a single domed chamber that hums with no mechanical noise, resonates with no stasis field, and flickers with no containment glyphs. The entrance is an arch of silver-hued blackstone woven with threads of psychoreactive crystal. Its frame pulses like the slowing heartbeat of something once divine. There is no label outside, no record in Trazyn's inventories. He calls it the Echo Hall. Within its bounds lies a single exhibit, one that sings not with voice but with memory. A monument not to death or destruction, but to the moment a people chose to vanish rather than allow their soul song to be consumed. This is the Wraithbone Choir of Altansar. Once, Altansar was a craft world, a searing jewel of culture and precision that drifted perilously close to the Eye of Terror. Its people, ever proud and aloof, refused to abandon their path, even as the warp whispered to them through the veil. When they disappeared into the Eye, consumed by tides of madness and demonic claw, it was believed all had been lost. But loss, to Trazyn the Infinite, is only the first step toward acquisition. The choir was not a battlefield. It was not a treasure hoard. It was a sacred assembly. 24 Eldar, psychically gifted artisans and soul weavers, linked together in a song so complex that its harmonic frequencies could rewrite the memory of a dying soul, allowing it to pass into the craft world's infinity circuit with perfect clarity. A eulogy made into code, a dirge that became eternity. When Altansar fell, the choir sang one final note. The exhibit that rests within Solemnace captures that instant, not a second before, not a fraction after. A ring of tall, pale Eldar forms, each robed in flowing bone ceramic vestments, their faces serene and resolute. They stand encircling a pool of crystallized wraithbone, its surface rippling with stilled psychic resonance. Their hands are joined, their eyes are closed, their mouths are slightly parted in eternal invocation. The music cannot be heard by normal ears. The room is utterly silent, but those who walk within its confines report echoes. Not sounds exactly, but sensations. A grief that does not belong to them. A beauty they do not understand, but which moves them to tears. Sometimes visitors fall to their knees, overtaken by phantom memories, whole lives not their own. The choir's final song lingers in the psycho-temporal curvature of the chamber, not audible but present, like a scent carried on the soul. How Trazyn came to possess them is unknown. No record exists of any Necron assault on Altansar prior to its disappearance into the Eye, but Trazyn has always trafficked in the impossible. Theories abound. Some say he sent a temporal skiff into the moment of Altansar's last breath, harvesting the choir just as the warp swallowed them. Others claim the choir was not taken from Altansar itself, but from the fragment of the craft world that later returned, a ghost ship spat back from the warp during the 13th Black Crusade. A handful of radical Eldar believe he created it entirely from psychic residue and false memory, constructing an artificial grief so perfect it became real. Trazyn has never offered explanation. In truth, he seldom speaks of the choir at all, yet he visits them often. The chamber in which they stand is subtly different from the rest of Solemnace. The light is dimmer, softer, refracted through high arches and dappled crystal. The walls are lined with faint inscriptions, not Necron hieroglyphs, but Eldar runes, etched with care. The runes don't describe the scene. They apologize for it. One of Trazyn's oldest cryptex, Anacret of the Silver Equinox, once questioned the purpose of the choir's inclusion. "They sing nothing," she wrote. "They cannot be dissected, analyzed, or repurposed for chronomantic study. They represent no victory. Why preserve them?" Trazyn's reply, recorded in the archives, was simple. "Because they remember what we chose to forget." There is power in that answer. The Necrontyr, before their soulless ascension into necrodermis, once possessed a deep affinity for art, though theirs was colder, harsher, less melodic. Their sculptures were expressions of defiance against a dying star. Their architecture, monuments to mortality, all of that was lost in the biotransference. the soul, the spark, the ache that birthed beauty, evaporated, replaced by endless function. And yet, before the choir, some say Trazyn stands for hours, motionless, listening. Not because he hears the song, but because he knows what it cost to sing it. The choir did not raise arms. They did not flee. They stood together and poured everything they were, every dream, every grief, every triumph, into one final harmony. And in doing so, they created something that transcended even the warp's reach. There is no containment field around them, no force barrier. They require no protection. No thief would dare touch them, and no demon could desecrate them without first understanding their sorrow. The Eldar, when they learn of this display, are divided in outrage and awe. Some call for vengeance, declaring the act sacrilegious. Others, more wise, simply mourn. A few, farseers of Ulthwé and Saim Han, those who have brushed the psychic vibrations of the choir through shared dream visions, believe the preservation is a mercy. A single cry held forever, so that what happened to Altansar is not fully forgotten. There are tales, unconfirmed, buried in esoteric Adeptus Astra Telepathica dream logs, that those with psychic sensitivity who sleep near the Echo Hall often awaken crying or whispering in ancient Eldar tongue. Some record melodies upon waking, brief fragments of alien song etched into waking thought. Trazyn stores these recordings, filing them away without commentary. He never discards them. The choir has never moved, not once. Yet there was a night, many cycles ago, when Solemnace experienced a brief blackout, not of energy, but of memory. A psychic feedback ripple, possibly triggered by an external warp storm, rendered the databanks of several galleries inert for exactly 7.8 seconds. When the systems reinitialized, the choir was unchanged, but the wraithbone pool at their feet had deepened by a single millimeter. Trazyn said nothing, but he posted 2 Seraptech constructs at the chamber entrance for 17 solar rotations, then removed them again. Since then, he has left the choir undisturbed. There are no labels in the Echo Hall, no plaques or catalog tags. The exhibit is not listed on any manifest, and yet it is one of the most perfect things in the entire museum. A lament frozen, a sacrifice preserved, the last song of a doomed world, still singing. There are artifacts within Trazyn the Infinite's museum that defy categorization. Relics so saturated with history, emotion, and mystery that they are not displayed but sealed, vaulted behind layers of enigma and entropic containment. These are not merely weapons or devices, they are experiences, fragments of galactic trauma captured and repurposed into tools of impossible specificity. Deep in the isolated lower galleries, where few cryptechs are permitted to operate unsupervised, stands a pedestal of obsidian glass surrounded by concentric rings of energy mirrors. No stasis field hums in this chamber, no alarms sound, no lich guard wait in shadow. Only silence, pure and total. At the center of the chamber, hovering above the pedestal, is a single object that gleams with strange light, at times crimson, at times gold, at times a shimmering shade that cannot be named. Its form shifts slightly with each glance, like a weapon viewed through water. Its name is spoken only by Trazyn himself, the empathic obliterator. It is not known when he found it. No record exists in the annals of the Necron dynasties. It is not referenced in Mechanicus archives. There are no scattered tales of xenos weapon caches, no forgotten planets hiding it away. Some believe Trazyn created it. Others suspect he uncovered it during a raid on a hidden temple to the Eldar god Morai Heg. A more esoteric theory claims the weapon is a crystallized memory, not of an individual, but of an entire civilization's fall. Whatever its origin, the empathic obliterator is real, and it has been used. The weapon functions unlike anything in Trazyn's collection. It is not a blade, though it can cut. It is not a gun, though it can destroy. It does not require ammunition or psychic fuel or technomantic charge. It feeds on emotion, draws in the fear, grief, and guilt of those around it, and converts it into annihilation. To hold it is to be pierced by 1,000 voices, not your own. To use it is to die 1,000 deaths in an instant. But for the victim, death comes not by impact or fire. It comes by being unmade, forgotten by the very emotions that once defined them. Trazyn first activated it during what later became known as the Museum War, an internal conflict within Solemnace sparked by a catastrophic containment failure. A temporal stasis breach within Gallery 9 released several dangerous bio-exhibits simultaneously. Among them was a partially reanimated enslaver matrix, a psionic life form capable of overwhelming entire planetary populations with emotion manipulation. Once breached, the matrix didn't attack with claws or fire. It amplified. Every moment of sorrow, despair, or hatred felt by the museum's custodial force multiplied exponentially. Cryptechs fell to their knees weeping for battles lost millennia ago. Lychguard turned their blades on each other, overcome by echoes of guilt they had never possessed in life. The central gallery began to collapse under the weight of emotional entropy. Trazyn, having failed to restabilize the stasis locks, entered the vault alone. What followed is known only through the black box recordings of a nearby Saudic scribe construct whose memory logs were recovered days later. Trazyn strode into the vortex of madness, carrying the empathic obliterator in both hands, his polished necrodermis reflecting the pulsating chaos around him. The Matrix, pulsing with agony, attempted to subsume him, but the weapon responded. It drank from the air, not the molecules, but the feelings in it, the grief, the loss, the rage, the sorrow, and then it released. A single pulse, silent, without light, without sound, spread out from the weapon like a void tide. All within 100-meter radius simply ceased, not turned to ash, not burned, erased. The Matrix was gone. So were the cryptechs, the constructs, the gallery walls. Even the memories of the room's design faded from the ship's systems. Trazyn had to rebuild it entirely from base geomantic templates. The obliterator was returned to its pedestal. He has never used it again, but he has studied it. For centuries afterward, Trazyn allowed no one into the chamber. Then, slowly, access was granted to a select few cryptechs, those whose minds had proven resilient to psychic distortion. These scholars spent decades attempting to understand the weapon's nature. They found no power source, no runic matrix, no crystalline heart or warp link. They discovered only this: the weapon's core held the recorded neural patterns of billions. An entire civilization, perhaps, or a battlefield of such agony that it condensed into matter. Trazyn began cataloging the known emotional imprints stored within the artifact. It became clear that the empathic obliterator was a living archive, not of knowledge, but of suffering. One could, if attuned properly, relive the final seconds of its victims. And there were many. A doomed Sentinel pilot calling for backup that never came. A mother cradling her disintegrating child as a planet died. A tyrant guard howling in void rage as its synaptic link was severed. A word-bearer, Astartes, paradoxically, whispering a prayer of hope as his soul was torn apart. Trazyn compiled these into what he dubbed the Dirge Codex, a library of emotion made manifest. But after only 3 entries, he halted the project. Cryptech Anchorez, who was decoding the 4th pattern, a data screen believed to originate from the war in heaven itself, self-terminated. Not in malfunction, but in grief. The codex was sealed. Now the empathic obliterator stands alone once more, untouched. but Trazyn has modified the chamber surrounding it. Soft harmonic waves play through the air, subtle null hymns designed to stabilize psychic pressure. A low, ever-present hum gently insulates the weapon's presence from the rest of Solemnace, but those who come near it say the hum is not mechanical. It is singing. Trazyn has hinted that the Obliterator is not merely a weapon, but a failsafe, a key. Should Solemnace ever fall into hostile hands, be it Chaos, the Tyranids, or the Imperium itself, Trazyn has implied he would activate it again, but not as a targeted strike, as a curtain, to erase the entire museum from the galaxy's memory, to remove not only the relics and exhibits, but the idea of them. It would be as if none of it ever existed. No saints, no monsters, no wars, no Trazyn. Only silence, an obliteration not of matter but of meaning, and in that final moment the weapon would echo the only thing left worth remembering. Everything once felt can be forgotten. Everything once known can be lost, unless it is preserved. Amidst the chronological labyrinth of Solemnace, beyond the chambers of conquest, beneath the tyrant cells and war vaults, deeper even than the black tombs of forgotten empires, there lies a room that defies the purpose of the museum around it. Not because of its contents, but because of what it represents. It is neither a moment of war nor a frozen breath of tragedy. It is not destruction, nor sorrow, nor glory. It is stillness. This room is not marked with Necron glyphs. There is no digital lock, no quantum seal. It is simply called the Last Church. At first glance, the exhibit seems almost insultingly mundane. A simple stone structure, low and weathered, its once proud spires worn smooth by time. Its arched entrance is cracked, its stained glass windows shattered. Inside, there are no weapons, no data nodes or stasis displays, just pews of rotting wood, a weathered altar, and a figure slumped before it in eternal silence. And yet this structure, this unimposing ruin, is among the most sacred and volatile relics in Trazyn the Infinite's possession, for it is not a replica, not a facsimile. It is the original. It is the last remaining pre-imperial place of worship from old Earth, recovered from the cradle of humanity in the closing hours of the Age of Strife. Trazyn found it, buried beneath the ruins of Europa, entombed in continental drift and centuries of soot. According to his own encoded observations, written in a style half eulogy, half mockery, the structure was extracted just before the final tectonic shifts would have crushed it into ash. He noted, with uncharacteristic reverence, that some truths do not scream, they kneel. Within the chamber, time is not stopped, but slowed. The air is thick, heavy with the scent of old incense and ionized stone. The light is dim and gold, cast from a false sun that hangs motionless above the chapel dome. An artificial star designed to mimic the midday glow of Terra's atmosphere before the age of technology. This environment is no accident. Trazyn had the light calibrated exactly to the solar register of the 29th millennium, as recorded in lost Martian charts salvaged from the Arc Mechanicum Divinitas Crucis. The exhibit's centerpiece is the chapel's interior, preserved with absurd precision. Every crack in the stone, every charred candle stub, every message scratched into the pews. Trazyn made no edits, no corrections. Even a broken floor tile near the pulpit remains askew, untouched, as if dared into permanence. At the altar, facing away from the entrance, sits the frozen form of a man, old, hunched, draped in faded cloth. His hands are folded before him, his head bowed, his mouth slightly parted. This is Uriah, the last priest of the old faiths. He is not encased in glass, not held in stasis. He sits beneath a low-resonance null field that maintains the moment before his final word. Not silence, but the moment before silence. A breath trapped in time. Who was he? Most do not know. Official imperial doctrine forbids the study of him. No records remain, at least none outside Solemnace. But Trazyn knows. He always knows. Uriah was the last to resist. Not with weapons, not with ideology, but with presence. In those final days before Unity, when the Emperor of Mankind walked Terra not as a god, but as a warlord cloaked in reason and radiance, he visited the old religions. One by one they were ended. Most died with curses, others with fire. But the last church remained, untouched, until the Emperor himself arrived. He came not to kill, but to speak. And so they spoke, this God made flesh, and this old man of crumbling stone. What they said is not recorded, or perhaps it was, but the records were destroyed. Some whisper that their conversation spanned days. Others claim it ended in a single sigh. But when it was done, Uriah was alone, his faith still intact. The Emperor, as the tale goes, walked away, not in rage but in silence. The church fell shortly thereafter, burned by orbital cleansing or collapsed by tectonic upheaval. None know for certain. But Trazyn had been watching. Perhaps he had predicted this moment. Perhaps he had sent a chrono thief back across centuries to observe. Or perhaps he merely sifted the ashes of history with hands far more patient than any mortal scholar. He found it. The building, the priest, the memory, and he took it. Now it rests in a cradle of shadow, not as mockery, but as something else entirely. Respect? Perhaps. Trazyn does not allow the church to be visited. No emissary from the Mechanicus has ever been admitted to study it. No Necron noble is granted access. Even his most trusted cryptechs are kept away. This is his personal reliquary, his paradox, his quietest treasure. The room does not sing, it does not scream. But if you are allowed to approach it, if you stand beneath the hanging false sun and let the silence settle, you feel it. Not with your senses, with something deeper, a questioning, a weight, a presence. The kind that lingers not in minds but in souls. Some among the Inquisition have whispered that the church is not merely an exhibit, but a tether, a psychic scar left in the skin of reality, a place so steeped in meaning that it continues to exist in defiance of history. That within this space, the old truths still echo. That if you listen closely, you might hear not Uriah's breath, but the Emperor's reply. And perhaps this is why Trazyn keeps it. Not for conquest, not for pride, but for proof. Proof that even gods must explain themselves. Proof that before the galaxy burned, before the statues rose, before the lies of divinity calcified into doctrine, there was a moment where a man in golden armor stood before a man in rags. And the one in rags did not kneel. It is not a display of power. It is a question, unspoken, unanswered. And perhaps, to Trazyn the Infinite, that is the greatest artifact of all. At the highest pinnacle of Solemnace, above the storm-veiled upper vaults and domes of illusion glass, far from the war relics and relics of blood-stained saints, lies a chamber untouched by violence or despair. A chamber that does not remember the past, but watches the future. An ancient, incomprehensible throne of power that predates nearly every other structure on the planet. It is not an exhibit. It is not curated. It is not labeled. It simply is. This is the celestial orrery, a construct of such scale and arcane complexity that even the most audacious of the Necron cryptechs refer to it only in whispers, as if speaking of it aloud would invite cosmic consequence. The room that holds it is vast, not in the mortal sense of large. It is vast in the way the void is vast. Its ceiling is not visible, lost in a cascade of shifting star fields. Its floor is mirror smooth, reflecting 1,000 galaxies in the span of each step. There are no walls, yet the space is enclosed. It does not obey geometry. It simply contains. Within this endless, enclosed sky drifts the orrery, a stellar map of the galaxy, rendered not in glass or metal, but in reality itself. It is a model, not a metaphorical one, but an actual functioning simulation of the galaxy. Each orb of light, each shifting trail of dust, each glowing filament of energy is not a light show or illusion, but a synchronized, causally accurate representation of stars, systems, and black holes. Each is bound to its real-world counterpart by strands of temporal resonance. They move as their true forms move across the cold oceans of the void, with an accuracy beyond even the most advanced Imperial auger engines. At its center is a slowly pulsing representation of the Milky Way's heart. The galactic core spins in absolute silence, ringed by arcane mechanisms. Vast gear constructs the size of moons, forged in prehistory, turning slowly with the weight of inevitability. Each system is represented in precise miniature: Cadia, Terra, Macragge, Comarag, the Eye of Terror. Even the locations of the Tyranid hive fleets are tracked, shifting like great shadows through the void. The celestial orrery is not static, it responds. When a star goes nova, the orrery flares. When warp storms rise, they slither across the star paths of the projection. When worlds fall or are extinguished, their lights fade from the model. And if one knows the sequence, if one dares to use the mechanisms buried deep within the hidden interfaces, then the orrery can do more than reflect. It can change. This is not rumor. This is not speculation. The celestial orrery has been activated before. Long ago, in the earliest days following the Necron Tire's biotransference into undying metal, the Silent King commanded the orrery to erase 3 stars whose trajectories intersected with the awakening tomb worlds. They were not simply destroyed with weapons. They were erased, made to die before they could affect the future. No explosions, no fallout. Their presence in the real galaxy simply ceased, as if history had skipped them. It was said that the stars blinked out, and their light never reached the eyes of those who watched them. The implications of such power are terrifying beyond description. Trazyn understands this, which is why, of all things within Solemnace, he has never placed the orrery under guard. There are no lich guard here, no stasis fields, no entropy locks. There is no need. Anyone foolish enough to interfere would not die. They would simply vanish from causality, their memory overwritten, their choices folded back into the loop and collapsed. Trazyn does not use the orrery lightly. In truth, he uses it only rarely, and only when his calculations, spanning centuries of projection and counterfactual analysis, leave no other path. But he visits it often, not to alter but to watch. He comes alone, always, walking into the center of the mirrored floor, where an elevated dais emerges only at his touch. There, a single control node rests, an artifact of such elegant simplicity that it appears no more than a glass rod, thin as a finger. It is this that commands the fate of stars. Trazyn has never revealed the full extent of what he has done with the orrery. But there are signs. It is known that during the rise of Hive Fleet Kraken, a series of unexplainable gravitational anomalies occurred in the Arius subsector. Stars shifted out of orbit, collapsing Tyranid pathways and breaking synaptic chains. The Mechanicus declared it a rare galactic ripple, but some suspect it was not natural at all. In the final hours of the 13th Black Crusade, as Abaddon's fleet descended upon Cadia, the orrery flared just once. Trazyn was nowhere to be found. It is theorized by a select few within the Xenorite cults that he delayed the collapse of the planet's surface by several hours, allowing key Imperial personnel to escape. Not out of compassion, but because his exhibits were still on board. To Trazyn, the celestial orrery is not merely a device. It is his greatest curatorial tool. With it, he can maintain the framework of history itself. He does not wish to rule the galaxy. He does not wish to remake it in his image. He simply wants it to remain intact long enough to be remembered. Cryptek's whisper of the nights he spends in that void-lit chamber, murmuring to himself, watching systems shift and stars die. They say he talks to the orrery as a lover would, that he addresses it not as a machine, but as a companion. And in a way, it is. It has been with him longer than any other exhibit. It is not something he stole. It is something he inherited. There are secret paths in Solemnace, hidden tunnels through non-Euclidean folds of space that lead nowhere. Some believe these are not security redundancies, but escape routes. That should the galaxy collapse into war beyond salvage, Trazyn could use the orrery to thread himself into another time, another configuration of reality where the stars still shine and the museum still matters. But he has not fled. Not yet. Because above all else, the celestial orrery is not a weapon. It is a promise that history can be preserved, that fate can be understood, that the death of stars can be catalogued, analyzed, and appreciated, and perhaps, just perhaps, if wielded with care, prevented. The light in the chamber never dims, the stars never stop moving, and Trazyn the Infinite, collector of histories, guardian of the unending record, stands watch, not as a conqueror, not as a god, but as a witness. And in the mirror sky above, the galaxy spins on. There are stories buried in the deeper strata of Solemnace. Rumors pass between crypteks with lowered voices and slow, halting words. Not myths, not curated displays, but events, incidents. Moments when the stillness of the museum cracked open and reality, in all its savage chaos, spilled inward. The most infamous of these is not documented in Trazyn's records. There is no chamber dedicated to it, no polished floor to walk, no informative glyph to read, no preserved victims on display. It is not a gallery. It is a scar. The incident is known among those who survived it as the War in the Museum. It began, as many catastrophes do in Solemnace, with a stasis failure. But this was no mere containment breach. This was not the errant twitch of a genestealer limb, nor the misfire of a psychic ward. It was a cascade failure, an unraveling of multiple temporal locks across different levels of the museum, triggered by a seismic tremor deep within the tectonic subvaults. Whether it was natural or sabotage remains unclear. Trazyn has never clarified, but the consequences were immediate. The first alarm sounded in Vault Theta 9, home to the Hive Tyrant. A sudden phase shift in its containment prism caused the outer shell to flicker, momentarily disrupting its psychic suppression field. It did not fully awaken, but it moved, and that movement, in turn, caused micro-ripples across the entropic grid, reverberating through neighboring galleries. Then Gallery 14, the diorama of the Siege of Gallus Prime, lost synchronization. The stasis-locked Space Marines, Eldar Rangers, and Orc invaders froze at the wrong angle. Motion data became corrupted. Bodies reactivated incorrectly. A Lich Guard technician tasked with realigning the gravity well was impaled by a power claw, still twitching in an Orc's gauntlet. Elsewhere, in Gallery Theta Vel, a smaller, stranger disaster began. A looped exhibit, an Adeptus Mechanicus attempt to entomb a Cetan shard using a synthetic Blackstone reactor, began running forward. The loop was designed to pause mid-crisis just before the reactor failed. When the containment began to progress, the shard inside became self-aware and very, very angry. It took 9 seconds for things to collapse completely. Multiple exhibits destabilized. The neural net architecture of Solemnace, built to handle 1 to 2 active exhibits at once for Trazyn's manipulation or maintenance, now had 7 cascading conflicts, each interacting in ways no cryptek had ever predicted. One of the worst breaches occurred in the fall of Orpheus Chamber, an event once perfectly preserved as a mournful scene of planetary annihilation became real. The thermal simulation layer initiated in full, sky igniting, winds of ash cycling with hurricane force. 6 maintenance constructs were incinerated. The remaining 4 now exhibit strange behavioral anomalies, including ritual humming and a refusal to speak of what the skies showed. But the true crisis came when the tyrant got loose. Specimen Alpha 4 Null, the Hive Tyrant, the most dangerous single organism ever captured by the museum, sensed the disorder. The disruption in the network's stabilizers weakened its prison. And whether by chance or by design, the psychic null field failed. In one shrieking second of reawakening, it called out. Not to its kin in the void, not to the swarm that would never answer, but to everything. The creatures in neighboring galleries twitched. The genestealer brood on level 6, roused, clawing at the walls. The enslaver husk in the silent rotunda turned toward the sound and began to pulse. The hive tyrant smashed through its prism. It did not kill with thought. It did not bellow orders. It simply existed in its full, uncontained monstrosity for the first time in centuries. It burst into Gallery Thetavel, annihilated the artificial Cetan shard, and absorbed its residual energy into its massive frame. It had no plan, no hunger. It was rage, stripped of logic. A wounded god insect demanding the stars pay for its imprisonment. And for the first time in Solemnace's history, Trazyn did not send his cryptex. He did not dispatch Lichguard. He went himself. Accounts vary wildly on what happened next. Some say Trazyn activated the empathic obliterator, though no data shows a resonant signature in the area. Others claim he opened a micro-tesseract into a black event within the Eye of Terror and baited the tyrant toward it. But one record, extracted from the neural core of a damaged Sautic maintenance drone, describes something stranger. Curator engaged entity at center axis. Activated artifact unknown. Projected 6 historical echoes. Tyrant absorbed 3. Recoiled. Screamed. Curator spoke to it. Weapon retracted. Entity staggered. Vault collapsed inward. Null spike re-established. Gallery restabilized. All echoes gone. The meaning of this log has never been confirmed. Trazyn never explained what happened. What is certain is that the tyrant was recaptured, not slain, not destroyed, but contained once more. The gallery surrounding its prison was rebuilt from scratch, the original space sealed behind a monolithic wall of blank stone and fused time metal. No one has entered that old wing since, not even Trazyn. And across Solemnace, things changed. Some exhibits were permanently deactivated, others were reclassified as volatile temporals and now require double verification to access. A dozen stasis vaults were realigned. One cryptech was deconstructed for speaking the phrase, "it wanted to learn." Trazyn returned to his usual routines. He resumed his tours, his cataloging, his quiet, murmured conversations with inert saints and weeping statues. He never referenced the incident, but occasionally in the low-lit galleries where failed exhibits are stored, one can find strange data etched into the walls. Not glyphs, not language, scratches. 3 long gouges, as if made by claws, or something trying to get out. The war in the museum is not remembered officially. It is not on display, but its aftermath is felt in the slight tension of Solemnace's ambient energy, in the newer redundancies layered over every lock, in the occasional flicker in a wall where none should exist, and in the echo of a scream that no longer belongs to a creature, but to the idea of freedom, an idea Trazyn does not tolerate, not in his museum, not in his history, not ever again. Deep beneath Solemnace, far below the curated dioramas of war and the quiet halls of contemplation, exists a place so isolated that even Trazyn rarely visits it. There are no signs to direct travelers, no map to guide them. The path to this vault is not straight, but recursive, turning back in on itself as if reluctant to grant entry. It is the only place in the entire museum where the very architecture seems unwilling to be known. The cryptexts call it the chamber that forgets itself. Its true name, recorded only once in an encrypted entry in Trazyn's private logs, is the Vault of Broken Promises. Unlike other parts of the museum, this chamber is not filled with artifacts of physical magnitude. There are no grand battles here, no preserved tyrants, no saints in stasis. Instead, the vault houses a collection of things far more insidious: agreements, treaties, oaths, covenants, compacts. Every artifact within this chamber represents a vow that was once made and then shattered. Not through negligence or failure, but choice. Deliberate betrayal, recorded and stored like relics of pure entropy. The vault is structured like a spiral, its walls sloped and layered in concentric bands of alloy not seen anywhere else on Solemnace. The ceiling is low, creating a sense of weight pressing down, not from mass but from expectation. At the center of the spiral is a single dais where the heaviest artifact rests, but to reach it, one must pass through the broken words of history. Each layer of the vault houses an exhibit, and each is a monument to a promise undone. The outer ring holds the Treaty of Belsor, once signed between an imperial rogue trader dynasty and the craft world Yggdrasil. An ancient scroll, scorched and fragmented, hovers in a null field. The blood seals are still intact, but the signatures are burned away. The treaty promised peace in exchange for the return of a lost Eldar artifact. The rogue trader delivered a false copy. The Eldar retaliated by igniting the forests of Endriel. 8 billion humans died in the fires. The humans responded with exterminatus. Yggdrasil lost 2 seers and 1,000 souls. No one gained anything. The promise lies there, whispering its failure into the cold air. Next is the Unity Accord of Ositri Prime, a pact sworn between the Adeptus Mechanicus and a newly formed autonomous Forge cult. The deal had been sealed through data baptism and binary ritual, unity, knowledge, and freedom of research, all sanctioned by the priesthood of Mars. But within 6 years, the Forge cult had begun work on self-aware AI. The Mechanicus responded with silence, then orbiting mass drivers. Trazyn has preserved the original command cogitator that signed the accord. It sits on a plinth, its logic coil still smoldering faintly. A Mechanicus sigil is etched into its casing, accompanied by the word excommunicatus. There is no plaque. Trazyn allows visitors to deduce the context. A smaller chamber, dimly lit and slightly colder, houses what appears at first to be a child's toy, a battered plush effigy in the shape of a Terran bird, its synthetic feathers frayed and torn. This is all that remains of the Kaidelian Compromise, a personal oath between a war master of the Astra Militarum and the child governor of a loyal frontier world. The war master had promised to spare the capital if the PDF surrendered immediately. The child agreed, handed over the keys to the fortress gates. Hours later, orbital bombardment turned the world into dust. The stuffed toy was recovered from the debris field by a salvage servitor 37 years later. Trazyn keeps it displayed in a sphere of absolute silence. Even footsteps are muted within the chamber. Some claim that if you stare at the toy long enough, the air becomes hard to breathe. That's not an anomaly. It's the weight of a promise broken by a man who smiled while making it. Farther in, the walls begin to darken. The temperature drops. One section of the vault is restricted even to cryptex, a sealed corridor known only as the Oath Crypt. Inside, Trazyn has preserved the remnants of Necron compacts made in the ancient days before the war in heaven. These are not human documents or imperial scrolls. These are soul binds, contracts written in the living minds of kings, meant to be honored across eternity. One in particular glows faintly within its containment orb, a shimmering glyph pattern once encoded between Sharek, the Silent King, and a cabal of ancient Necron Star Lords. The compact guaranteed mutual non-aggression in the pursuit of galactic restoration. But when the Silent King activated the Great Sleep, those who refused the slumber were erased, not killed, not imprisoned, erased from Necron record entirely. Their existence struck out like names from stone. The soulbind remains, flickering, an agreement never formally dissolved, never rewritten. A silent condemnation, eternally visible. But no artifact in the vault is more unsettling than the one at its core. Suspended above the central dais is a simple iron chain, human-forged, unremarkable in design, but Trazyn has designated it as Exhibit Omega-1. Its origin is unverified, but fragments of oral histories gathered from various sources, including gene-locked Mechanicus scrolls and Black Library echoes, hint at a whispered event during the final years of the Great Crusade, a moment in which one of the Emperor's sons, unnamed and unconfirmed, made a vow of absolute loyalty, not to the Imperium, not to the Emperor, but to another brother. Private, unbreakable vow, one forged in desperation, in blood, on the eve of betrayal. The chain, it is said, was the symbol of that vow. When the heresy broke, that brother cast it into the warp. Trazyn found it, or made it, or summoned it from the echoes of what could have been. Now it floats, silent and trembling with residual resonance. Unlike other exhibits, it reacts. It hums when oaths are made nearby. It vibrates slightly in the presence of conflicting memory. One cryptech reported that when he tried to touch it, he saw a battlefield from no known history. Two armored figures kneeling together, one grasping the chain, the other weeping. The chain burned a sigil into the cryptech's palm that has yet to fade. Trazyn, it is said, stood before the chain once for 9 days without moving. When he emerged, he ordered the vault sealed for 3 years. He has never spoken of what he saw. The Vault of Broken Promises is not a place of glory. It is not honored. There is no honor in betrayal, but it is essential. For Trazyn understands something others do not. The galaxy does not spin on victories. It does not revolve around great speeches or momentous wars. It spins on failure. Every war, every crusade, every declaration, each begins with an agreement. And when that agreement fails, history happens. The vault is his archive of why the galaxy is broken, why peace never lasts, why every golden dream decays into rust and blood. In this place, hope is not preserved, it is dissected, and the echoes of every broken promise still whisper, unseen, through the cold, silent spiral of the tomb. There exists a section of Solemnace sealed behind a triple helix barrier of phase-locked dimensional gates, so secure that even Necron royalty, were they to attempt entry without Trazyn's explicit permission, would find themselves unwound atom by atom and filed away into the vaults they sought to plunder. It is a vault not guarded for the danger it poses to Solemnace, but for the confusion it might cause the galaxy. Not a collection of relics, but reflections of people who should not exist, of identities splintered from their own myths. This is the Clone Wars collection, and it is, without question, the most heretical archive in the entire museum. Inside, the air is colder than anywhere else on Solemnace, not thermally, but conceptually. The vault operates on a separate temporal rhythm, its stasis engines humming with frequencies too low to hear, but too deep to ignore. Every surface gleams with mirrored alloys. Every corner reflects your form in ways subtly wrong. Delayed movements, backward smiles, blinking eyes that don't match your own. The exhibits are not statues or portraits. They are beings, individuals preserved mid-thought, their physical forms paused in the absolute stillness of cryo-temporal encapsulation. The museum refers to them not by name, but by classification. Clone series, genetic anomaly, forked essence, recombined index. But for those few who have glimpsed them, the recognition is instant. Primarchs, saints, pariahs, all of them wrong, yet somehow right. The most infamous specimen rests in the heart of the chamber. Exhibit Aurelius Zero, the untainted clone of Fulgrim, known to some as the Perfect Serpent. Clad in golden armor, chased with violet trim, his face serene, lips parted in half prayer, half command, he stands on a dais of blank stone crystal. His sword rests in its scabbard. His eyes are closed, not in death, but meditation. This is Fulgrim as he was before the fall, or as he could have been had he never picked up the layer blade, had he never turned from the Emperor. This clone is not a mindless shell. It possesses memory. It dreams. Trazyn's notes, painstakingly recorded in a cipher of his own making, suggest that Fulgrim's clone is aware of its nature. Not ignorant, not confused, but contemplative. He understands that he is not the original. He understands he is better. He has the power of a demigod and the clarity of a man who never fell. But he is trapped in stillness, forever the possibility of redemption, with no stage to perform it. Some say that in moments of silence, the clone's head shifts slightly, that its posture has changed over the millennia. One cryptech recorded the suggestion of a tear on the cheek. The report was deleted, the cryptech decommissioned. But Fulgrim is not the only exhibit here. In a sealed chamber adjacent to Aurelius Zero lies Subject Rabban class, Theta 3, identified by biometric markers as a clone of Robout Guilliman, the Avenging Sun. Unlike the clone that walks the galaxy today, this version wears armor devoid of any imperial iconography. His chest plate bears the symbol of the Council of Unity, a forgotten sigil from the pre-heresy days. His face is younger, his eyes harder, less noble, more calculating. He carries no blade, no bolter, only a scroll unfurled to his left, an endless codex of laws unratified, revisions never passed. The clone was recovered, if Trazyn's fragmented logs can be trusted, from an aborted Mechanicus project beneath the moon of Demnos 4, in a facility destroyed by orbital strike the same day it was unearthed. The Mechanicus denied it ever existed, but the data points in Trazyn's catalog suggest that this version of Guilliman had been created not as a leader, but as a governor, bred for cold logic and galactic administration. A Guilliman who might have replaced the Emperor himself, had the heresy never occurred. The clone is preserved not because of what it is, but because of what it represents. The path untaken. A galaxy ruled not by the High Lords of Terra, but by a single iron mind, unbound by emotion or divinity. Trazyn called it the Cold Crown. Other specimens line the chamber. There is Subject M36 Echo, a clone believed to be of Sebastian Thor, though this one wears no robes. His features are distorted, face twisted in horror, arms raised as if to shield himself from something unseen. His DNA matches 98% of canonical records, but with subtle alterations. His tongue has been surgically removed, his vocal cords fused. It is speculated that this version of Thor was created for display only, not use. A mockery, perhaps, or an attempt to manifest martyrdom physically. Trazyn does not name the source of this clone. He only refers to it as a gift from a man who forgets nothing and remembers nothing correctly. In a far corner, behind a stasis wall that glows with a dim green pulse, floats Subject XX Fulgent, a mystery even to Trazyn. The genetic material matches no known Primarch. The armor is a mix of pre-heresy design and unknown composites. The markings are inconsistent, glyphs from the lost language of the Rangdan, symbols of the Emperor's own personal guard, and a sigil resembling the number 20, although scratched out repeatedly. Some within the Ordo Redactus believe this may be a clone of one of the two forgotten Primarchs. Others claim it is not a clone at all, but an imitation, forged from genetic drift and manufactured myth. Trazyn keeps it locked tighter than anything else in the chamber. Even he does not step close to it. The Clone Wars collection does not operate like other displays. It has no interactive plaques, no contextual histories. It is a vault of hypotheticals. Each specimen represents not what was, but what could have been. They are not trophies. They are alternate endings. Histories cut short before they began. And yet Trazyn did not collect these figures for power. He did not build an army. He did not attempt to control them, weaponize them, or sell them to the highest bidder. He archived them. Because he understands a truth that few dare speak aloud. In a galaxy defined by legacy, identity is more fragile than any throne. The moment you begin to ask what if, reality begins to crack, and in those cracks, something else looks back. Trazyn keeps the Clone Wars collection under constant psychic insulation, its chamber shielded against even the warp's whispers. Because he knows, perhaps better than anyone, that these fragments of false identity, these mirrored souls, have mass. They pull, and if one were ever allowed to believe it was real, truly real, the galaxy might listen. There are no visitors permitted here, no cryptech studies allowed, no simulations run. Only one warning, etched in perfect Necrontier script above the sealed entrance. There is nothing more dangerous than the dream of who we could have been. And beyond that threshold, history waits, not as it was, but as it almost became. A reflection not frozen in glass, but suspended in guilt. Trazyn the Infinite is not only a collector of events and people, he is a curator of nature at its most terrible. Not the slow and methodical cataloging of biological taxonomy, as the Adeptus Mechanicus might attempt, nor the theological abhorrence of the Ordo Xenos, who see every alien as a threat to be purified. No, within the labyrinthine reaches of Solemnace lies a different approach, a gallery not built to educate or even preserve, but to contain what defies understanding. It is called the Obsidian Menagerie. Unlike the Clone Vaults or the Prismatic Galleries, the Menagerie is alive, though one must be careful when using that word in Solemnace. The halls pulse with ambient humidity and a low-level thrum of biological resonance. Light here does not come from above, but filters in from bioluminescent panels embedded in the floor, panels which flicker subtly when observed, as if reacting. The air is heavy with sterilization agents and the faint scent of fungal rot. This is not a space that honors warfare or ideology. This is a zoo, but one built by a being who neither fears nor reveres the creatures within. It is here that Trazyn keeps those entities which elude classification. Creatures whose biology, behavior, or very existence challenge the fundamental laws of life. The exhibits are not locked in cages. Not exactly. Each creature exists in a unique, self-contained pocket environment, stasis-tempered, spatially anchored, and psychically buffered. The menagerie's corridors spiral around these zones like arteries around a sleeping heart. Each biome is tailored to the native conditions of its subject, frozen tundras, gas giant clouds, even a slice of non-Euclidean swamp sealed behind a glass arch of impossibly growing vines. The first chamber houses specimen VY Tau 011, colloquially referred to by Trazyn's internal records as the Silent Carnivore. Originally discovered in the ruins of a Tau colony annihilated without apparent cause, The entity resembles a vaguely humanoid figure composed of constantly rearranging crystalline filaments. It moves only when unobserved. Surveillance of the creature is impossible. Recording devices malfunction within seconds, and even Necron sensor glyphs return only blank static. Yet the thing has grown. Over time, its form has become denser, more defined, resembling now a figure in constant prayer. Trazyn suspects the creature is not a predator in the traditional sense, but an idea made manifest. A meme life form born from suppressed fear and recursive failure. He keeps it because no one else can. Deeper still, behind a gate of psychically reactive glass that bends to the observer's thoughts, is specimen AM-43, the glass Leviathan, a void-dwelling creature the size of a small cruiser. Its body is composed of semi-transparent carapace etched with fractal veins of luminescent fluid. The Leviathan was recovered after an event in the Ghoul Stars, a region already cursed with bizarre xeno-activity. When it was first brought into containment, it spoke, not with voice, but by imprinting glyphs into the walls of its prison. These glyphs described things that had not yet happened. A Black Templar's crusade lost in warp turbulence. An exodite world consumed by a flare that no star chart acknowledged. The death of a farser whose name had not yet been spoken. Every glyph later came true. Trazyn has since severed its cognitive link, but the Leviathan still pulses with slow, silent prophecy. He visits it only once a year, not to observe, but to listen. One of the more grotesque inhabitants of the menagerie is specimen NUL-05, a biomass mass known simply as the Eater of Reflections. Discovered on a dead moon orbiting a tomb world once used by the Sotek dynasty, the organism devours not flesh or light, but identity. Any being who comes into direct visual contact with it finds themselves slowly erased, not physically, but in the memory of others. After prolonged exposure, companions cease to recognize the victim. Data archives erase their names. Vox logs develop static when referencing them. The Eater has no face, no limbs. It is a constantly shifting ooze of deep black ichor. Yet its surface, when viewed obliquely, reveals images, visions of people the viewer once knew but forgot. Moments they were present for, yet can no longer explain. Trazyn discovered this specimen not during a war, but through sheer accident, while exploring lost Necrontier psych vaults. He lost 3 cryptex during extraction. He no longer remembers their names. He keeps the Eater in a mirrored chamber, surrounded by servitor drones whose memory functions are reset daily. It is said that the thing occasionally whispers, but only the name of the one observing it. Trazyn has never entered the chamber. Toward the menagerie's innermost spiral lies perhaps its most haunting creature, specimen LIG Infinity, simply labeled as the Pilgrim. The Pilgrim is humanoid, vaguely female, wrapped in burial cloth and layered with ancient talismans from at least 12 different lost human cultures. It does not breathe, it does not move, and yet it walks, not in space, but in time. Every so often, the stasis field surrounding the Pilgrim fractures slightly. During these moments, measured in nanoseconds, the creature is not present. When it reappears, it is slightly different, older, wiser, wounded. Once it returned missing an arm. Another time, its eyes had turned pure gold. It carries no weapon. It does not speak. But the psychic resonance of its presence suggests immense sorrow, the kind that bends causality around it like gravity. Trazyn does not understand what it is. He has tried to trace its genetic structure. No result. He has attempted to read its mind. The attempt almost broke his containment vaults across 4 galleries. He keeps the Pilgrim not as an exhibit, but as a question, a reminder that even the infinite cannot understand all things, and that perhaps some things are not meant to be collected. The Obsidian Menagerie is closed to the public, if such a thing can be said to exist in a place where nothing is ever truly open. Even the Necron dynasties speak little of it. Trazyn makes no effort to flaunt its existence, no dramatic pronouncements. He simply maintains it, feeds it, preserves it. Because in a galaxy teeming with war, there are forces that do not take sides, entities that walk alongside conflict but are not of it, beings that predate gods and ignore death. These too must be remembered, not because they are noble, not because they are terrible, but because they exist. And for Trazyn the Infinite, that alone makes them worthy. Here, beneath the polished dignity of the museum's grand halls, in the biological depths of terror and wonder, the strangest truths of the galaxy breathe in silence. No war cries, no banners, no glory, only glass, only stasis, only possibility. For all its grandeur, for all its cosmic reverence and time-locked stillness, Solemnace was never meant to be a vault alone. It was always, at its core, a weapon, not one of fire or destruction, but of memory, of presence, and of impact, a blade forged of history, ready to cut reality itself. And on rare, catastrophic occasions, it is unsheathed. There have been moments, so rare, so utterly submerged in redacted histories, that Trazyn the Infinite has opened the vaults, not to remove a relic, not to display a piece, but to deploy the collection. This is not done lightly. There are no protocols for it, no ceremonial gesture, no mass awakening of stasis fields across the lower galleries. It is not an act of strategy. It is, for Trazyn, necessity, a balancing of the scales. When the galaxy tips too far toward madness, chaos, or unmaking, and he senses that all the stories he has captured may soon be swallowed by oblivion, then the curator acts. It happened most notably during the fall of Cadia. Records from that apocalyptic siege are muddied by warp distortion, conflicting witness testimony, and heavy inquisitorial redactions. But threads remain, faint, buried in the reports of surviving Cadian officers, Ordo Xenos field agents, and fragments of transmission intercepted by Imperial Navy patrols. In the chaos of Abaddon's 13th Black Crusade, amidst the shattered pylons and the collapsing tectonic strata of the doomed world, something appeared. At first, it was mistaken for an advancing Necron detachment, monoliths and phalanxes manifesting with signature green flares, carving through cultists and traitor Astartes. But then came the anomalies. An entire cohort of Death Corps of Krieg soldiers, fully armed, bearing battle damage from a conflict centuries out of date, emerged from a time-split ridge and engaged the enemy without coordination or orders. Their markings were unfamiliar. Their names did not exist in any extant guard rosters. On the plains south of Kasser Kraf, a squad of Sisters of Silence manifested in full formation, none older than 30. All were listed as killed in action during the Goge Vandire purges. They moved as one. They did not speak. They obliterated a demonic incursion of Slaneshi Shriekers, then vanished before Imperial reinforcements could establish contact. Then came the most surreal deployment. Saint Celestine, or someone who bore her likeness, descended from the sky flanked by 2 Gemini Superior, clad in antique, burnished armor. She did not engage the enemy directly. Instead, she stood atop a fallen basilica and glowed, her very presence igniting faith in the defenders. Vox recordings show Cadian soldiers refusing to fall back under fire, praising her name. Yet she is not mentioned in the official ecclesiarchal accounts of the battle. Trazyn had unleashed them. The pieces of his collection, reactivated, released into the flames of real war. Not all were heroic. A World Eater's berserker appeared among the Black Legion ranks, only to immediately turn on them in a frenzied blood rage, having been preserved in a moment of post-heresy insanity. His chain axe took the heads of 5 traitor Astartes before a demonic talon gutted him. A silent tableau of the fall of Tanagar, an imperial victory over an orc. War, long forgotten, somehow materialized in the cratered center of a chaos artillery field. Witnesses claimed the orcs were real, that they fought, bled, and died before fading like smoke. The Imperium believed it to be a miracle. The Inquisition suspected an alien intervention. The Eldar, silent witnesses to the event, recognized the fingerprint immediately. Trazyn had used his vaults not to preserve history, but to summon it. These were not simple illusions, not holograms or projected images. These were temporal echoes, actualized fragments of once-lived events and beings, restored and fielded with pinpoint accuracy. Trazyn's collection had become his army. For decades afterward, the Imperium debated what had happened on Cadia's final days, but Trazyn had already returned his toys to their shelves. It was not the first time he had done this. In the shadow of the Tarsus Ultra-Containment Breach, when High Fleet Leviathan threatened to overwhelm the sector, a dormant Necron artifact activated and broadcast a distress call on a frequency no known civilization recognized. Within days, a cluster of pre-heresy Astartes appeared on the battlefield, markings consistent with the Firehawks chapter, though the Firehawks had been long since transformed into the Legion of the Damned. These warriors did not speak. They fought, and when the Tyranids were routed, they vanished, leaving behind only vitrified craters and a silence thick with unreality. Trazyn's fingerprints were never proven. Why does he do it? Why unseal the collection? Why risk contaminating the artifacts, degrading their purity? Because Trazyn understands something others do not. A museum must be protected not by its walls, but by its relevance. The galaxy forgets. It always forgets. Time erodes truth. War distorts history. Zealots rewrite it. Aliens destroy it. Chaos mocks it. The very warp itself rewinds it. But Trazyn remembers. And when remembrance is no longer enough, when reality trembles on the verge of forgetting itself, he intervenes. Not to tip the scales toward victory, not to favor one species, one faction, one ideology, but to stabilize the narrative, to ensure that history continues, that there is still something left to preserve. Within Solemnace, after such deployments, Trazyn does not gloat. He does not carve plaques or update exhibits. He merely walks the halls, speaking to the still figures, to the reshelved moments and returned warriors. He offers no thanks, no congratulations, only quiet acknowledgments. You were convincing. You held the line well. You died beautifully. He places their stasis fields back in order, cleans the stardust from their armor, and recalibrates the chronal stasis loops to the precise moment before activation. There is no glory, no reward, only the knowledge that once again, the Infinite Collection has fulfilled its purpose. Some say he keeps a separate gallery, hidden from all others, filled with only used exhibits. Items, people, and echoes that were sent out and returned slightly different, no longer pristine, no longer correct. He cannot bear to display them among the untouched. He calls it the second shelf, and it is locked tight with 26 levels of encryption. He visits it more often now, because the galaxy is unraveling faster than even he expected, and he knows, deep within his core, that one day he will need to unleash the collection again, not as a surgical strike, not as a stabilizing push, but in full, a war of memory fought across the stars with relics as soldiers and echoes as generals, an apocalypse of remembrance. And when that day comes, the galaxy will see the museum for what it truly is, not a place of preservation, but a library of revenants, waiting, ready, and remembered.